There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you, and please be seated. I'll bow to you next time properly. Honorable members, as we normally do, we request you, in the interests of safety, to keep your masks on so that and sit in our designated seats. The first item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC is committed in advancing the cause of development, world peace, disarmament, and environmentally sustainable development, in line with the Freedom Charter, which says, and I quote, "There shall be peace and friendship," and close quote. We therefore call for mediation and engagement to end war unfolding between Russia and Ukraine, and avoid further violence and death in the area. We call for parties to devote increased effort to diplomacy and find a solution that will help de-escalate tension and avert armed conflict. We are concerned about results and the impact of what the armed conflict will bring about in human suffering, destruction of infrastructure, as well as devastating effect of the economy only in Ukraine, but on the whole world. This will affect financial market and invoke inflation fears across the world, which has not yet recovered from the economic fallout from COVID-19 pandemic. We urge the United Nations security to find a lasting solution to this conflict and ease the tension between the two countries. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Sorry, the DA? It's okay to take off your mask when you speak and then put it on immediately afterwards.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I'm going to rise and just ask you, beg your indulgence, please. We've got a technical error at the moment for ours. Can we hold ours over, please? Just our first member statement. Can we hold it over? Can we hold our slot over?
Okay, let's pass. You get all right. EFF.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Over the past year in this House, the EFF sent a strong warning to the government to never default to mandatory vaccination, especially even after noted the government's imminent failure in mainstreaming tenets of primary healthcare, prevention and education as the answer to the crisis of misinformation for vaccine hesitancy. This advice by the EFF to the government was fortunately adhered to by the African National Cowards, an important position because the government was already flirting with Big Pharma Johnson & Johnson and monopolized the vaccine industry for the benefit of Ramaphosa's friends who bully him like he's a child at our own expense. To date, in South Africa, we do not have the liberty to choose from a variety of vaccines.
Honorable member, just hang on. Yes, Honorable Member.
I'm rising on Rule 85. The members just said that the Johnson & Johnson are the friends of the president, and it has done that thing for his benefit.
Yes, so Honorable Member, you know you can't make such a statement without substantiation. So please withdraw it and then proceed.
I said for the benefit of Ramaphosa's friends. It's a political statement.
Honorable Member.
I've said this before countless of times in Parliament. I'm able to say for the benefit of Ramaphosa's friends.
Honorable member, you are imputing ill motives to the president, and it's not acceptable. Please withdraw it so that we proceed.
Withdrawn.
Thank you.
Withdrawn. Who bully him like he is a child at our own expense? To date in South Africa, we do not have the liberty to choose from a variety of vaccines, which vaccine we want, like in other countries, because Ramaphosa was bullied and is too scared to take the country into confidence, or in the very least, stand up for himself because he cannot stand up for us. However, this has not stopped universities, the private sector, and the public higher education sector to operate in silos as if this country has no leadership, by excluding the children of this land from accessing their right to education because they refuse to take Bill Gates' jab. We call on the President Ramaphosa to, in the very least, as a president, to stop public universities like the University of Johannesburg, Rhodes, and others from abusing and stealing education from the youth with weak creative takes that disempower freedoms, empower Johnson & Johnson, and see them operate in a state of exception as if this country is lawless and leaderless. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. ANC comments with arrest of Zimbabwe, Botswana, KZN suspect involved in deadly shootout with the police. The ANC commends the law enforcement agency for their bravery in intercepting the gang of about 25 gunmen, allegedly from KwaZulu-Natal, Zimbabwe, and Botswana, while planning a cash-in-transit heist in Johannesburg on Monday, the 21st of February 2022. The heavily armed gang was alleged en route to carry out a heist when their plans were trapped by the law enforcement agency. The confrontation happened in Rosettenville, south of Johannesburg, and left 8 suspects dead and another 11 arrested. 7 police officers were injured during the ordeal. We commend this attempt robbery in the strongest term. These incidents are becoming way too common in our country and are happening more frequently, endangering the lives of the innocent citizen. It is clear, judging by the weapon found on the scene, that these suspects were dangerous and prepared to kill. We commend the police for their work, hard work that they did, and dedication in pursuing these dangerous criminals. We wish the injured police officers a safe and a speedy recovery. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member, IFP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Msimang doesn't seem to be around, so I'll read the statement. On 25th February, President Ramaphosa presided over the first Intergovernmental National Litigation Forum, described as and I quote, a crucial step towards an efficient, coordinated state legal services system, close quote. Among others, the need for this forum was identified as a necessary step to combat the lack of intergovernmental coordination in the face of litigation against the state. State litigation is an enormous drain on the fiscus, with legal fees for government over the past 5 financial years amounting to approximately 7 billion rand. While the Auditor General has reported that the contingent liability was sitting at 147 billion for the 2020-2021 financial year. In the light of this information, it is of great concern that the Presidency and the Department of Justice first began working in 2018 on the terms of reference for such a forum. Why did it take 4 years to draft terms of reference? As the IFP member for Justice and Constitutional Development, it is my sincere plea that the serious matter be afforded the attention and urgency it deserves, so that billions wasted on litigation can instead be directed to providing the essential services our people so desperately need. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. UDM?
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the UDM is concerned over the slow pace of SADC countries, especially the Directorate of Organ on Politics, Defense and Security in fulfilling its purpose. SADC has, since its establishment, not achieved notable progress in strengthening its efforts to integrate economies and promote peace and security. As a result, Southern Africa is faced with various urgent security issues, such as armed conflict and robberies, which are contributing to state and human insecurity in the region. To date, South Africa is facing an escalation of crimes, such as the smuggling of vehicles to neighboring countries. Has the time not arrived for the SADC countries to talk about having a federal system to address matters such as economy, security, and foreign policy? Lastly, a highly skilled team must be assigned to track down the perpetrators of these cross-border crimes and prevent all manner of security issues in this region. SADC has a duty to promote peace and security in the region. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now ask for Freedom Front Plus.
Eergister was die 143ste herdenking van die slag van Amajuba. Dit is 'n belangrike datum in die teenkoloniale geskiedenis van Suid-Afrika. Die 1870s was 'n maak-of-breek-dekade vir Britse imperialisme. Aan die Kaapse oostgrens het konflik met Khoza-stamme gewoed. In die Natal-kolonie het dit veral na Isandwana gelyk om Zulu-Naamse slawe om die Pax Britannia te verbreek. En aan die Kaapse noordgrens het Britse soldate gesukkel om Korana-vegters op eilande in die Oranje rivier te verslaan. Die ZR, of Transvaalse Boererepubliek, is in 1877 deur Brittanje geannekteer, omdat hulle Bapedi-vegters van Khoza Sekhukhune nie kon basraak. Vir die boere was die ZR hulle vaderland, nie 'n afspringplek vir Britse militêre avonture nie. Daarom is 'n nuwe Republikeinse regering gevestig en Britse besettingsmagte is beleer. 'n Invalsmag het uit Durban opgerig, maar is op 27 Februarie op die Majuba-berg vernietig. Vryheid is op minstens een plek herwin. 5 jaar later is die rykste goudveld ter wêreld in die ZR ontdek. Die imperiale oormag sou later alle weerstand uit die pad vee om dit in besit te neem. Wat mens by die gevolgtrekking bring. Die stryd om vryheid word nooit finaal gewen nie, maar vir 'n trotse volk word dit ook nooit finaal verloor nie. Ek dank u.
Honorable members, ongelukkig kon ons... Hoekom lag julle nou? Yes, no, what I mean is that unfortunately, the sound, we couldn't do anything about it right now. So the translator couldn't do the work. This is why you couldn't get the translation. I nearly asked you, why don't you speak Afrikaans? But I won't. DA, are you right? Are you ready? Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. A recent headline of a baby thrown out of a window of a moving car sent shockwaves across South Africa and thrust the long reported by shunned scourge of child abandonment into the spotlight. With statistics being scarce and plans to prevent this barbaric war against children almost non-existent, researchers have had to extract information from mortuaries to highlight the need for something to be done about this brutal reality. Shocking statistics indicate that in South Africa, 84% of all neonaticides and infanticides recorded result from child abandonment, far higher than the US and the UK statistics. The question we have to ask ourselves and work together across all sectors and disciplines to answer is why this is so prevalent and how we can stop it. There is no excuse for us not to have a comprehensive body of research into child abandonment, given the prevalence of the scourge. The DA believes there is a need for a deliberate effort by all relevant departments to urgently commit resources to uncover the causes of child abandonment and develop strategies to stop it before one more life is lost. Simply looking the other way is no longer an option. It won't go away, but it will accentuate the high levels of child abuse and neglect by the current ANC government that wants its citizens to think it cares for the vulnerable in society. This is unacceptable. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
very much. ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We welcome the announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address to support hemp and cannabis farming for people in the Eastern Cape and KZN. This is a big step towards the commercialization of hemp and cannabis and will unlock many opportunities which has the potential to create in excess of 100,000 jobs with the right support from government and its development finance institutions. The people, particularly in Pondoland in the Eastern Cape, stand to benefit the most from this announcement, which will have broader economic growth implications for the Eastern Cape economy. We also welcome the announcement by Premier of the Eastern Cape, Premier Oscar Mabuyane, on Thursday night during his State of the Province address that an advisory panel to guide the development of the province's cannabis economy has been appointed. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. ATM. ATM. Okay, they're not here. Okay, ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. On Monday, the 21st February, 2022, President Cyril Ramaphosa, a real commander-in-chief of the South African Defence Force, not the artificial one in red, officiated on an annual Armed Forces Day at Barberton and Mbombela in Mpumalanga, Armed Forces Day to commensurate.
Just read. You are so young, you can't read. Read.
To commemorate the worst naval tragedy in the country's history.
Honorable Member, what are you raising on? Just hold on, Honorable Member. Please take your seat. Yes, what are you raising on?
The artificial red.
Speaker, Parliament provided all members with printers. Are the ANC members not using their printers? They're reading from their cell phones.
No one must be left behind. Don't laugh, please.
Honorable Speaker.
Go ahead, Honorable Member.
The mission is accomplished. He wanted you to laugh. The sinking of the troop ship SS Mendy in the English Channel on the 21st February 1917. More than 600 SA Native Labour Corps troops drowned when the ill-fated troop ship was struck by the SS Darrow. The ANC is grateful for the role our soldiers have played in the peacekeeping and for helping the police during the unrest and enforcement of the lockdown in the country. They played a critical part during unrest, assisting law enforcement agencies to restore order and protect key economic infrastructure. In addition, when Parliament was engulfed in fire at the beginning of this year, the personnel from Air Force Base, Yesterplaat, Military Aviation Rescue, and firefighting services were part of the first responders to douse the flames. These brave men and women are always there to restore stability and prevent a spillover of the conflict in other countries. We thank them for their contribution. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy.
Thank you, Honorable Member. DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, the DA submitted a PIA application to obtain the details of President Ramaphosa's golden handshake with National Police Commissioner General Ketla Sitole. It is unconscionable that the President would waste taxpayers' money settling a political squabble between his minister and the National Police Commissioner, when he had already initiated formal disciplinary proceedings against the Commissioner. In September last year, the President issued Sithole with a notice of intention to suspend. This should have logically been followed by a board of inquiry, but instead was followed by months of silence and inaction from the presidency. Only after Sithole's recent public utterances about receiving political instructions from former Minister of Police Fikile Mbalula to procure the Nasrec spy grabber device did the President actually jump into action. Not in the interests of the country, as he says, but in the interests of the ANC. Sithole was set to lift the lid on the dodgy ANC dealings surrounding Nasrec, so the President has silenced him with a golden handshake. The DA will not rest until the full details of this dodgy deal are exposed. If we are going to rebuild the South African Police Service, it has to be done from a foundation of transparency and trust. It cannot be built on a foundation of hidden agendas and golden handshakes.
Thank you. EFF.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Land hunger continues to be a very serious problem, facing only Black people in this country for both human settlement and agricultural purposes, with the state thus far having dismally failed to restore Black child's pride by returning stolen land. The EFF sponsored a motion on expropriation of land without compensation, and the ANC government failed to support an EFF motion that could have changed the land ownership patterns of the Republic of South Africa to be reflective of the demographics of the country. And history will harshly judge the ANC and its leadership under Ramaphosa, hence the electoral decline in every election. Deputy Speaker, let me speak to the land that the ANC government claimed to have returned to our people with specific focus on land restituted through the CPA model. And the reality of the matter is that more than 70% of CPAs are failing to comply with the CPA Act because they are not adequately supported by the department where land restored to our people and set up for failure. The 2020-2021 CPA annual reports unashamedly paints a very bleak picture about CPAs, where the department is still admitting to internal capacity to supporting the CPAs. And this internal capacity was raised even before 2019. I heard it for the first time in 2019 when I arrived in Parliament. And the report also states that 21 CPAs have sold land restituted to them without mentioning how many hectares is that. The minister brought CPA amendment bill, and they claimed that the bill will assist in bringing about capacity. And thus far, we are not seeing any changes. Parliament processed the bill. It is gathering dust, sitting in the offices of Ramaphosa. Land is restored through CPA and government.
Honorable member, it's President or Mr. if you wish. You
Okay.
know the rules, yes.
I'll do that next time if I can mention the name.
No, you do it now. You do it
Oh,
now.
Mr. Okay, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Land is restored through CPA, and government is failing to report that some of the land restored were very productive agricultural land currently run down by CPA due to lack of support from the department. Lack of support to CPAs has resulted in Bakata Bakafela CPA in the Northwest going beyond land restored to them within Plenary Game Reserve and now administering privately owned land and causing serious confusions within the community of Bakata Bakafela. House Chair, is it now not the time for this House to have a discussion if CPA is still the right vehicle for communal land ownership? As what we are seeing is shocking, where land restored to CPA is still worked by white land thieves because of failure by the department in supporting our people. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, we are calling upon the President, Mr. President, to stop sleeping on duty and sign off all bills.
Your time is over, Honorable Member. Your time is over.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The ANC welcomes the Minister of Finance budget speech delivered on behalf of the Executive on Wednesday, 23rd February 2022, in the Good Hope Chamber in Parliament. We believe the budget 2022 speaks to the poor and vulnerable in that it increases the social wage to 59% of the total non-interest spending. This is aimed at addressing poverty and unemployment and to support economic recovery. Half of the population now receive at least one grant from the state. On spending programs, we welcome the medium-term allocation of 76 billion for job creation programs. In addition, 18 billion is made available for the Presidential Employment Initiative, totaling 94 billion. The small business loan guarantees of 15 billion that will be facilitated through participating banks and development finance institutions will also assist in job opportunities. We are pleased to see that household consumption has grown by 5.6% in 2021 and is expected to grow by 2.5% in 2022. This is a major driver in the economy and a positive signal for demand-side growth. We welcome the 110 billion set aside for spending priorities. These include the COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress Grant, which is extended for another 12 months. Bursaries for students benefiting from the NSFAS and the Presidential Employment Initiative. Additional 52 billion financial support to current bursary holders and first-year students under NSFAS. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Al-Jamaa.
Salam, Deputy Speaker. The 15 billion rand needed to raise the hopes of the African child dying a slow death of thirst can be in the bank this month to build the long-awaited nearly 100-meter high wall for the Umzimvubi catchment water project in Maclear in the Joe Maccabi District Municipality, mentioned in the 2022 State of the Nation address in the 6th Parliament by President Ramaphosa to provide water to 1 million residents around Maclear in former Transkei, in an area where our first struggle icons came from to overthrow apartheid, but an area which is the last to get water 28 years after liberation. For Al-Jamaa, this is a grand resistance dam. The Honorary Chief Wapemi Majola is a home girl of the district. How will I ever need the help of Parliament through the Office of the Speaker to safeguard and be on high oversight alert and help submit the 15 billion rand offer needed to the Minister of Water? So in spite of funding being very hard to find, it is not scuttled by the long line of spoilers. I need the help of Parliament to assist my concern after joining Parliament's Water and Sanitation Portfolio Committee under the leadership of Committee Chair Honorable Masega on a week-long visit to the Eastern Cape. My statement on Al-Jamaa's 15th birthday, which Al-Jamaa gets a speaking opportunity once a year, is: will Parliament play the extensive oversight role that is now required, or sit back and not carry out its mandate and ignore further long delays to build the Umzimvubi Dam? Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Al-Jamaa. I notice Chief Whip of the majority party, the operative word is penny. Forget about the rest. ANC.
Be ke tlo gopela tumelo ya gago gore ke time video gore ke te ke be le reception e botse gobane ke dutse ka kwa gaufi le mosa wa Zimbabwe. Nka tima la stulo.
Go siame mma, tswela pele.
Ke a leboga ke tlo bolela goba ke kgatlhanong le melao e meswa ya go tiišetša go lwa kgatlhanong le go tlhakišwa ga basadi le bana. In response to the suffering that women and children of this country are subjected to, the ANC-led government passed laws designed to protect them. President Ramaphosa recently signed into law 3 pieces of legislation that honor our government's commitment to strengthen the criminal justice system, promote accountability across the state, and put support for survivors at the center of all our effort. President signed off on the Criminal Law Amendment Bill and the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill and the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. This will see all sexual offenders listed on a national register, will make it easier for victims to give evidence, and will provide a support structure for the implementation of protection orders. The enactment of legislation that protects victims of abuse and makes it more difficult for perpetrators to escape justice is a major step forward in government's effort against this pandemic. Ke a leboga modulasetulo.
Thank you. DA?
There can be no doubt in anyone's mind that we are in the midst of a full-on Russian invasion of Ukraine. The casualties are piling up and the risk of an onslaught in Kiev ever encroaching. The DA has called on South Africa from months ago to use its position in BRICS and proximity to President Vladimir Putin to de-escalate the rising tensions that have been advancing since at least 2014. This has been an opportune time for the ANC to reclaim some really lost space in the international arena by making making positive gains from a series of blaring blusters. The DA was hopeful when it saw that DIRCO press release that seemed to be the voice of Minister Naledi Pandor condemning the actions of Russia and supporting the cause as well. We were taken aback by reports on the Sunday Times that suggested that President Cyril Ramaphosa was not happy with this position and that we needed a more even-keeled position and referred to his mediation statement. We were then confused when the ANC came into the fray with Minister Lindiwe Zulu's statement, which seemed to take the party further back from discussion and confuse the country as to where we now stand, whilst the rest of the world seems very united and vividly clear that there should be no threat of World War III and that Russia needs to be stopped at all costs. It did not help when our leader, John Steenhuisen, exposed how the ANC and our Chief of Defense happily paraded themselves at the Defender of the Fatherland Day celebration at the Russian embassy, while the injuries and deaths in Ukraine were piling up. The question that therefore needs to be clearly asked of the executive today is, where does the government stand in this conflict? And will they be joining the rest of the world in calling for sanctions against Russia? And if so, when will this call be made? Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses or the honorable members? Please go ahead, honorable member. Now, I can't see you from where I'm sitting. Pardon me, it's my vision. It's not you. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker. Indeed, I would concur with Honorable Ms. Whitfield that they want transparency, as we do want transparency about the abuser of the leader of the DA in this province, who happens to be MEC, with abused women. Yes, he has abused women. Please call them in the office as interns and get on top of them. I'm calling on DA women and mothers to stand up on this one and don't put politics on this one. And please defend the weak, defend the women, those that have been abused in the name of them getting the work.
You missed the memo. You missed the memo.
Secondly, Chairperson, the police, I don't know why it took so long to realize that they're doing the good work. By the way, what they did at Rosenville is much smaller than what they did in Midrand late last year, where they arrested 25 of these guys and gunned down 5 of them. This was the third one after Donville, so one must be very comfortable with the police doing very well when it comes to this hard one, including what they did yesterday morning in Delmas to those, again, who were trying to do havoc there. But also, the special team that is dealing with the kidnapping is doing very well. Is arresting the kidnappers, including those that from Vereeniging, that it took only 3 days, and they arrested 7 of them, those that were wanting ransom. At least, if you can clap for the police on this one, for the good job that they are, for the good job that we are doing. So we congratulate the police.
Deputy Speaker.
What has been raised?
Deputy Speaker.
What has been raised by Mr. Olomisa, General Olomisa, is something that we are looking at, something that we are working at.
What are you raising on, Honorable Member? Hold on, Minister. Yes?
Deputy Speaker, why are we cheering the Minister?
No, Honorable Member.
Job and the police for doing their
Honorable
job?
Member.
Why are we cheering them for doing their job?
Take your seat. That's not a point of order.
People.
Take your seat.
To catch criminals.
Just take your seat.
They have to come and cheer them here.
Bly stil daar, alsjeblieft.
No, you don't speak to me like that.
No. Take your seat, Honorable Member. You are out of order. In the first place, there's no rule that allows you to do what you are doing. You have no basis to do that. So just take your seats and be comfortable for a short while. You'll be home soon.
I'll never be comfortable with an ANC government.
Minister,
never.
Please go ahead. Finish.
Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, I don't want to be chaired. I said chair for the members of the South African Police, not me. I don't want to be chaired. I don't want any party cheering me on this one. Cheer the members of the South African Police who are doing the beautiful job. On the organ issue of dealing with the transnational crimes, yes, the organ is working. The ministers are meeting of police in these areas, including the head of the police dealing with these matters. As you see that the criminals are becoming blatant and crossing the borders, especially Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, and Lesotho. But we are handling that together to make sure that we respond. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The next ministerial response. What are you raising on, Honorable Member?
Deputy Speaker, in accordance to the National Assembly rules, ministers are meant to use the opportunity of ministerial executives to respond directly to members who have made member statements. And the minister is yet to respond to what Andrew Whitfield has said, Honorable Whitfield has said. So
thank you, Honorable Member.
Provide some clarity on that.
Yes, the ministers will respond. Honorable Member, we haven't even finished. Go ahead. Who's the next minister? Any next ministerial response? Honorable members, are there any further ministerial responses? No, honorable members. Yes, for once in your lifetime, you're right. It is unacceptable that we don't have enough ministerial responses. At least 6. We will take this with the appropriate authorities to talk about it. It's not appropriate. No.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
We have our hands up, Honorable.
Hands are up. Our hands are up on the virtual platform.
No, don't, honorable members, please, when you're on the visual platform, just speak so that we hear you, that you are there, because the hand is not very visible. As you can see, I'm not looking at any screen before me, so I can't see you. Please go ahead, Honorable, is it Deputy Minister? Ministers, please, who's going to start? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much. I would love to respond to the statement made on the announcement made by President Cyril Ramaphosa in his State of the Address to support hemp and cannabis commercialization. We welcome this statement also as DTIC, and we also welcome the progress made by the provinces in trying to commercialize the sector. The DTIC is playing an integral role in the development of the Cannabis Master Plan, which is led by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and leads the products development and manufacturing and market development pillars of Master Plan. As part of supporting the industry, the DTIC will develop a commercialization policy to leverage on opportunities arising from industrialization of cannabis and hemp in the areas of clothing, textile, leather, and footwear, agro-processing, pharmaceuticals, and cosmetics, facilitate investments to establish the manufacturing plants that will be used to produce medicine, cosmetics, food and textiles, and other value-added products. The DTIC will also facilitate local and export markets for cannabis products. As DTIC together with IDC will also explore the possibility of having support measures to support the sector. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The next is Honorable Zulu, and then Minister Lamola after that.
Thank you very much. I must take off my mask. My apologies. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just wanted to quickly thank Honorable Masango for bringing on board an issue that is of major concern to us too, that is related to child abandonment. And to say that as a Department of Social Development, we are responsible for the well-being of children, and we have to connect with other departments that are relevant for this issue. But we thank Honorable Masango for bringing it up, and I'm sure we'll discuss it at the Portfolio Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister Lamola.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will request not to switch on my video due to the fact that I'm carrying some medication. We also want to welcome the statement with regards to the three bills that will help us to deal with GBV in the country, and also state that one of the bills will enable digital platforms for members of society and the community to lodge their forms through a digital platform, which were already started in the Durban North Point Court as a form of a pilot project. And as the bills comes into place, we are hoping to do it countrywide, which we believe will do a lot to help the victims of gender-based violence to access justice from wherever they are, whichever location, and that will also help for the authorities to be able to pick it up and be enabled to respond as quickly as possible. And that one of the bills also make it compulsory, which is now the act, for anyone who is aware of domestic abuse to report it to the nearest authorities. And we believe this will also help for communities to come in and play a key role in the fight against gender-based violence, which we are hoping that communities should do so in their numbers, because somewhere, somehow, every one of us knows someone who could be being abused or who could be an abuser. And this is now a fight for all South Africans to take to each and every corner of the country, and let's make this country a gender-based free, a gender violence free country. It's upon us, and all of us as South Africans, we can do it. And now enabled by law, we have got no reasons to hide and not to report any gender-based violence issue that we are aware of. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Dlomo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Speaker, point of order.
Yeah, sorry, Honorable Mayor. What's the point of order?
When we started the sitting, you requested us to keep our masks on and only remove it when we are speaking. Member Paulsen has permanently been removing and not having his mask on, in defiance of that of the rules which you have actually outlined. And I was just raising that because we can't have a member who doesn't follow what is actually what we're supposed to be doing in the House.
Okay. Sustained. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Point of order, Chair.
Honorable Paulsen. Honorable.
anything about him showing me a first, it's fine. We'll meet outside. We'll meet outside.
Honorable Paulson. Honorable Paulson. No, order, honorable members, order. Order, honorable members. You can't be making. No, honorable member. In the first place, I never gave you a right to speak.
These old men are threatened.
Can you?
I want you to remember they threatened first.
Honorable member.
They threatened first. They must remember that.
Honorable member.
You only threatened me once. After that.
I think, Honorable Paulson, I think you owe the House a little bit of respect. Don't speak. I haven't given you a chance to speak. Don't speak, and I will not allow you to speak. You owe, honorable members, you can't be screaming like that in the House.
On a point of order,
Deputy at the back there. Can you stop that, please, man?
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Yes, go ahead, Honorable Natasha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it's really unparliamentary. First of all, let me start with the Honorable Hope. Right behind him, the guy was not wearing his mask, or the member was not wearing his mask. That's why they are saying sweep first in front of your door before you go and sweep at another person's door. So he must learn that concept. And then secondly, Honorable Speaker, there are two old men threatening the Honorable Nazir Paulson. They must stop with that attitude on threatening our members. We'll not threaten them. We will action very fast.
Members,
and they mustn't attempt.
Honorable members, be careful the language you are using. You shouldn't be doing that in the first place. Two wrongs don't make a right. None of you must be behaving as you do right now. It's not in order, and I expect you otherwise. Can you allow us to proceed with the House proceedings, please? And stop what
Speaker, I called a point of order either on.
What are you raising on, Honorable Member? I have ruled on the matter.
No, it's not on the matter, on this matter, because Honorable Ntlangwini has attended on this matter. But I wanted to say, Deputy Speaker, we have said to all of us when we speak here, especially using our gadgets, it must be quiet. The Honorable Member who's a minister, when he was speaking, when he was responding here, we can hear his kids behind. Can you also make sure that all of us, we follow the same rules?
That's the rule. That's the rule. There's no problem with that. We should always attend to that. But when things like that happen, no one plans them. So I hope that we will attend to it generally. It's not a problem that we should continue to have. Honorable members, I requested that we proceed. Is there any last? No, yes. Honorable Dromo, you were about to speak.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, on the issues of vaccines for COVID-19, in the country we are currently using Pfizer vaccine and J&J vaccines. Those are the ones that were available earlier on and were then procured. We do have enough of those vaccines, and all we really would want to request is if members can encourage South Africans to come forward and vaccinate. It is also true that SAPRA has recently approved the use of Sinopharm and Sinovac. Both are the vaccines for COVID-19 manufactured and coming in from the People's Republic of China. But however, there is no plan to procure them as yet because we have enough vaccines. So it is not about the president not wanting us to procure. It is just that we have enough stock of these two vaccines that we procured, but Sinopharm and Sinovac are now available in the country and have since been approved by SAPRA for use. We are not going to procure them for now because we have enough vaccines. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Is there any additional ministerial response? Honorable members, we've got 5 now. Okay, let's proceed. That concludes ministerial responses. The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of National Forests Amendment Bill and of report of Portfolio Committee on Forestry, Fisheries and Environment thereon.
I now recognize the Honorable N. Gancho. You are right, Honorable Chief Whip. She should have been sitting close by here. Would this card say it?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Good afternoon, honorable members. The National Forest Amendment Bill under consideration by this House was introduced to Parliament during the 5th Parliament in July 2016. The bill was initially processed by the former Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries Committee and is being finalized during this term by the reconfigured Committee of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries during this term. The National Amendment Bill, Bill 11 of 2016, was tagged as Section 76 after the joint tagging mechanisms of Parliament disagreed with the department's tagging as a Section 75, largely due to the content of the bill that affected provinces. The contentious issue was the mention of indigenous forest and nature conservation that are largely concurrent competences. The previous Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries received submissions. They held briefings and public hearings in 2016 in Parliament and extended public hearings in 2017 outside Parliament, deliberated and adopted introduced amendments. The National Assembly passed the bill in 2018 and referred it to NCOP for concurrence. The bill lapsed in May 2019 and was revised in October of the same year. Then the NCOP followed the due processes from 2019 and finally debated and passed it in December 2021 and returned it to the National Assembly for concurrence. The Portfolio Committee considered and agreed with the version of the NFA bill from the NCOP. The amendments were fairly short and straightforward. The amendments addressed trusteeship for the management of the national forest, the lack of efficient emergency measures that halt the destruction of forests, the lack of provisions for appeal process in the Principal Act, inadequate cooperative governance arrangements, lack of clarity of some terms in the Act, and non-alignment of certain provisions in the Act with the Constitution of the Republic and matters on gender and people living with disability. The committee is satisfied that the amendment bill is positioned to advance critical provisions in the Constitution, particularly Section 24 of the Constitution that advocates for environmental rights, sustainable development, and transformation of the society and the economy. The NFA promotes the sustainable management and development of forests and provide the protection of the certain forests and trees. The bill plays a critical role in transforming the forest landscape to promote diverse participation in the forest sector and enable communities to derive economic value from biodiversity. The introduced amendments are in the same spirit as the Principal Act. It is within this context that I would like to appreciate the effort of the provisions committees that processed the bill and the members of the current Portfolio Committee, Forestry, Environment, Forest and Fisheries. We are looking forward to implementation of the legislation, particularly to improvement of cooperative governance, development and biological assets, and beneficiation in communities for the benefit of current and future generations. I hereby recommend that the House adopts the presentation of National Forest Amendment Bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As there is no list of speakers, I now recognize the Chief Whip of the majority party.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and to all honorable members. I move that this House adopt the amendment bill as presented. Thank you.
Okay, that's the motion. There's an indication of members who want to do declarations. The DA.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. South Africa, a country blessed with an amazing climate and extensive biodiversity rarely found anywhere else in the world, and a mineral wealth that far outweighs that of many other countries. A country that has one of the best constitutions in the world with world-class legislation. A country which belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. The Democratic Alliance supports amendments to regulations that aim to improve the quality of life for all South Africans. Unfortunately, all too often, our laws and regulations are simply not enforced due to the lack of political will, corruption, and understaffed, undertrained, and under-equipped law enforcement personnel. The Democratic Alliance raised our concerns in the Portfolio Committee meeting regarding the amendments as they were discussed in the last Parliament with the previous committee, and then came back to a committee in a new Parliament with very few members who had been properly briefed in the previous term. Section 13 of the National Environmental Management Air Quality Act, Clause 51 in the revised bill, seeks to amend this section and to empower the Minister with the discretionary power to appoint the membership of the National Air Quality Committee. The membership of such a committee should be an open process to ensure that those who are appointed are fit for purpose, have the requisite expertise, appropriate knowledge, and most importantly, are not simply shills of the big oil and gas corporations allied with the ruling party, who seek to encourage corruption in order to prolong our dependency on fossil fuels with little regard for our air quality and our obligation to reduce carbon emissions. We have recently seen how the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy was able to issue a permit for seismic blasting with no consideration for the local people or the environment. According to Minister Creasy, she could not intervene, and the only way to protect the affected parties was to approach the court. President Ramaphosa, why appoint so many ministers if some ministers are more equal than others? We have recently seen the Limpopo provincial government grant permission for a Chinese-built coal-fired power station in Messina Makondo Special Economic Zone. This permission shows little or no regard for the required reduction in carbon emissions that are so vital for the survival of our planet. The UPL explosion has caused damage to our environment that, despite the intervention of our top scientists, is going to take up to 16 years for their surrounding environment to recover. While the Democratic Alliance absolutely supports economic development and job creation, we cannot allow the Trade and Industries Minister to keep pushing these developments at all costs. The long-term consequences are already a reality in KZN that our children and our grandchildren should not have to live with. It is extremely concerning that our ministers appear to act, well, actually when they do, in silos, often in the interest of big business, themselves and the ANC. Our Minister of Water Affairs stands by and watches as thousands of tons of coal slurry wash down the Mfolozi River after a slimes dam at a coal mine failed. Our Minister of Public Enterprises wrings his hands in despair when the country is load shed again by Eskom, which leads to sewage pumps not working and millions of litres of extra sewage runs into our rivers, dams and the ocean. My own town has been devastated by constant, prolonged power outages, caused not only by load shedding, but by theft and vandalisms. Arrests? I hear the Frank Sinatra song, just like regrets. There have been a few, far few to mention. Our Minister of Police is thrilled when 20 protesters, many of whom actually handed themselves in, are arrested after untold air and water pollution has been caused by thousands of protesters. Our Minister of Trade and Industry welcomes the Chinese development of a special economic zone in Limpopo without a care for the pollution created by the coal-fired power generation and other polluting industries. Our Minister of Labour is just so happy that there's a possibility of job creation, that the degradation of the quality of air that those people and their families will have to live with just doesn't seem to matter. Deputy Speaker, we need a capable cabinet of ministers who do not operate in silos, ministers who do not put self-interest and party first. Regulations and amendments remain just words on paper until we have ministers with a political will to enforce them. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson, EFF.
Deputy Speaker, I think I'm the only one awake and that knows that the Honourable Phillips was declaring the wrong bill. But anyway, back to the Forests Amendment Bill. Speaker, when the bill was tabled in this House, we rejected it because we felt that it missed an opportunity to transform the forestry industry, to break up the monopolies that dominate it, and to create a legislative framework for a thorough transformative drive in the industry. The various iterations that the bill has gone through at the NCOP do not change our view that this bill has failed to provide solutions to the many challenges faced by our people who work in the forestry industry, those who live adjacent to the forest, and those whose claim to land held by forestry companies have been frustrated for the past 2 decades. South Africa has extensive and valuable forest resources that are valued for their biological diversity, for medicinal and local uses, and for their aesthetic and spiritual values. South Africa has more than 1.49 million hectares of industrial forest plantations, and these plantations support a multi-billion rand industry, employing over 100,000 people. During the extensive public hearings, we heard firsthand the conditions forest dwellers and forestry industry workers experienced, and none of the amendments have addressed those issues. Forestry development offers real opportunities for poverty alleviation, employment, and enterprise development in the forestry communities, and can therefore serve as a catalyst to community development and upliftment. The state owns a large chunk of these forests and has opted to lease them out to various white-owned companies for next to nothing. These companies, such as the Amatole Forestry Company, have no regard for the law or the people they work with. The state has not facilitated any meaningful community development or involvement in the management of the forests adjacent to these communities. Communities should be empowered with skills and financial resources required to establish forestry enterprises on their own. We want forestry development projects to be socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable. Communities and Black emerging enterprises should not only be encouraged and assisted to plant trees, but should participate in the downstream beneficiation and value-adding activities such as non-timber forest products, ecotourism, and agroforestry. We need to revisit the role that SAFCO plays in the forestry industry. This state-owned company currently resides in public enterprises. Under the current Public Enterprises Minister, we have seen how much of our forestry functions have been privatized and further reducing public benefit in the forestry industry. SAFCO workers were promised they would receive shares if they moved to MTO, a private forestry company, but most SAFCO workers never received the shares they were promised if they moved to SAFCO. Instead, they were retrenched and bullied into early retirement. We therefore reject this bill.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable colleagues. The critical need to remedy deforestation cannot be overemphasized. Daily, we witness the devastating impacts of climate change. In the interest of future generations, we need to act swiftly and urgently in preserving our forests and woodlands. It has been estimated that globally, forests could provide more than 1/3 of the total CO2 reductions that are required to keep global warming below 2 degrees centigrade until 2030. Further, forests play a critical role in reducing soil erosion and floods. With their rich animal and plant biodiversity, the preservation and management of our forests must be central to our environmental commitments. The IFP strongly supports the bill's proposal to dramatically increase the penalty amount provided for in the National Forest Act from 50,000 to 10 million, with the possibility of imprisonment for certain categories of offences. Honourable members, as we always need to stress that our well-crafted laws are only as effective as those who enforce these provisions. The increase in penalties will mean very little if we do not ensure that the forestry officers mandated to patrol, seize and arrest in terms of the National Forest Act are well equipped to fulfill these crucial functions. The bill's proposal to include people from vulnerable and previously disadvantaged groups in the National Forestry Advisory Council is a much-needed amendment. The need to encourage participation of local people who rely on forestry for their livelihoods is fundamental for sustainable forest management. It is very much aligned with recent emphasis placed by our courts on the importance of including local communities in environmental decisions. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, the Speaker, Amucare Charitable Trust Foundation, known as ACT, is a global charity community operator in several countries, and it is founded by the spiritual leader, humanitarian and philanthropist known as Mohanji. The local branch is represented in South Africa by Ms. Salosh Pillay. This organization has already planted forest gardens in Uganda, undertaken reforesting projects in the United Kingdom and Mozambique, and is currently involved in a fruit tree plantation drive for 100,000 trees to celebrate the birthday month of the founder. As he states, and I quote, "Fruit tree plantation is not just an act of kindness, it is a social responsibility. This is giving the fruits of kindness to the coming generations beyond species. Fill the forests with fruit trees. Plant more fruit trees in and around your environment. It brings sweet grace to our lives beyond time," close quote. More organizations, Honourable Deputy Speaker, should follow this example. In conclusion, the IFP strongly supports the objectives of the long-awaited National Forest Amendment Bill, and we support the committee's recommendation that the National Assembly approves the amendments as made by the NCOP. I thank you.
Thank you, FF Plus.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The National Forest Amendment Bill has been amended by the other House and returned to the National Assembly for concurrence. The bill was initially tabled in Parliament in July of 2016, lapsed at the end of the 5th Parliament, and we have revived it in the 6th Parliament. The initial aim of the bill was to amend the National Forest Act of 1998 and to provide the clear definitions of natural forests and woodlands, provide for public trustees of the national forestry resources, increase the promotion and enforcement of sustainable forest management, increase the measures provided for in the Act to control and remedy deforestation, provide for appeals against decisions taken under delegated powers and duties, reinforce offences and penalties, as my colleagues have extensively mentioned, and provide for matters connected therewith. The proposed amendments of the other House is aiming to strengthen provisions for promoting sustainable forest management and not to change the current administrative processes of the functional areas listed in Schedule 4 of the Constitution. The proposed amendments will also not affect the current provincial mandate with regards to the management of forests.
The Principal Act further has various mechanisms to promote the use of forests for the benefit of all. These have not been affected by these proposed amendments. As a colleague commented, these amendments are quite self-explanatory. These amendments make the bill better, but implementation thereof remains to be seen, Deputy Speaker. Nkosi Buthelezi rightfully remarked once, it is the responsibility of all South Africans to safeguard our environment, and this must be a shared responsibility. Chairperson, the FF Plus will support the bill. I thank you.
Thank you. ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the National Forests Amendment Bill was introduced in 2016. That means the previous Parliament spent 3 years dealing with what doesn't seem to be a very contentious bill and then wasn't able to complete it. And now, it's 6 years later, that eventually this amendment bill has been passed. And I think we need to look very carefully as to how Parliament passes bills which are not controversial and the time that is taken. This bill, we've all agreed, is necessary. It amends the National Forestry Act to provide for clear definitions of forests and woodlands, public ownership of these spaces, to increase the promotion and enforcement of sustainable forest management, and to control and remedy deforestation. Now, there's nothing contentious about this. This, the ACDP supports, we all support it. So the challenge then, when one looks at the whole process from the National Assembly to the NCOP, we are now sitting in 2022. We've got elections in 2 years. We need to then look, what happens with all the bills we're dealing with at the moment that might lapse with the 2024 election? Well, we have the same situation, and I think we need to look very carefully at this, Deputy Speaker, how we deal with bills that could then pass on to the next Parliament. The second issue which I'd like to highlight is the increase in the penalty, which all parties supported, from 50,000 to 10 million. But being the longest serving member on the Justice Portfolio Committee, I know the challenges facing our criminal justice sector. How are they going to manage dealing with these very serious penalties that will then have to be dealt with in a higher court? And I think that's an issue which needs to be highlighted with what the chairperson pointed out when the Portfolio Committee was doing hearings on this issue, is the implementation. And one of the aspects of every bill that is brought before Parliament is to what degree has it been properly costed? Can it be implemented? And the impact, as I'm indicating, there will be an impact from the criminal justice perspective when one looks at the implementation of this much needed bill. We support the issue of the improvement of cooperative governments and, of course, the beneficiation of communities. This is very good. These are very good amendments. The question is, why did it take so long for it to be passed? The ACDP supports this bill. I thank you.
Thank you. UDM. UDM. Not here. ATM. Also not here. Good.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, we have no declaration to make, but we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The National Freedom Party welcomes the bill, but we emphasize that enforcement mechanism needs to be put in place.
Can you try something about your sound where you are? We can hear you, but very little.
I'm not sure whether
Go ahead again, Dati. Let's try it again.
The National Freedom Party welcomes the bill, but we emphasize that enforcement mechanism needs to be put in place. Structures like the Charter Council and established trust must perform allocated tasks properly. The Minister and Parliament must evaluate, monitor actions to increase oversight and whip where necessary for the benefit of citizens. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable BC. AIC,
We have no reason not to support the amendment, Speaker.
thank you. Cope, Cope is not here. PAC,
No declaration, Speaker, from the PAC.
okay. Al Jamaa,
Al Jamar supports the amendments. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
thank you. ANC,
Deputy Speaker, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, members of the House. The African National Congress recognizes the importance of protecting of the environment in order to guarantee the future well-being of the coming generation. Our environment is our greatest source of wealth for the nation, and this contributes directly to the economic development of our country. Our country has one of the richest forestry ecosystem and contributes meaningfully to job creation. The country's forest landscape has contributed to the development of many industries, such as paper and furniture making industries. We also know of the importance that our country's forests play in terms of mitigating against carbon emissions. Section 24 of the Constitution of the Republic commits us to using our natural resources in a sustainable manner while deriving economic benefits from such use. It is important to promote our national forest against various other forms of destruction. The destruction of the country's forestry, either through fire or other causes, has a negative impact not only on climate change, but on the socio-economic well-being of the communities that are residing next to these forests. We all know of the destructive impact of the outbreak of COVID-19 on our country's economy. The economic reconstruction and recovery plan has put growing our economy at the center of the plan, and the forestry sector has a definite positive role to play in this plan. As the African National Congress, we are most concerned about the well-being of the workers, and our biasness towards the working class is under no doubt. There are many jobs opportunities created in the forest sector, including its value chain. In 1994, ANC agricultural policy stipulated that one of the goals of the ANC is to harness workers' full potential in the forestry sector, while striving towards equity in access to power and resources. We know that many of our rural communities are dependent on their rural forestry lands for economic income generation and sustenance of their livelihoods. It is noted in the memorandum of the objects of the National Forest Amendment Bill that, open quote, most poor people and vulnerable groups located mainly in the rural areas of the country rely on the forestry for their livelihood, I close quote, and that this amendment will encourage their participation in ensuring sustainable forest management. We are more than encouraged by President Cyril Ramaphosa's call for a new consensus and a social compact that will help drive our country's economic growth and to protect the current economic livelihoods. We therefore call upon all stakeholders involved to heed the call of the President and forge this much needed social compact. South Africa is a very lucrative forestry industry, and this sector contributes significantly to our country's economic growth. The sector has an estimated export market value chain of about 38 billion rands and employs well above 165,000 people. The estimated number of people employed in the sector in 1994 was around 60,000. At the 54th National Conference of the ANC, it was resolved that interventions be put in place to fully utilize the potential of South Africa's forestry sector to drive empowerment, transformation, economic growth, and decent work. This, Honorable Deputy Speaker, must be done with deep consideration for climate change, and our National Development Plan has indicated that Africa has the potential to reduce emissions by protecting its forest. The purpose of this National Forest Amendment Bill is to promote sustainable management and development of forest and to provide for the protection of certain forests and trees. The amendment bill seeks to strengthen and promote equity by inclusion of participation by vulnerable and previously disadvantaged groups into the National Forest Advisory Council. The National Forest Advisory Council, established in terms of the National Forest Act of 1998, plays a core and critical role as a stakeholder advisory group that reviews progress and gives strategic directions to the National Forest Program, which is an NFP. The National Forest Program is a global adopted framework for national forest policy development, planning and implementation, and it is applicable to all countries and constitutes an integral part of our country's national sustainable development strategy. In conclusion, Honorable Deputy Speaker, as the ANC, we support the adoption of this report of the National Forest Amendment Bill, and we take note and acknowledge that this is the right step in terms of realizing the ideals enshrined in the Freedom Charter that all South Africans shall share in the country natural resource. I thank you.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion as moved by the Chief Whip of the majority party that the bill as amended be passed? Yes, Honorable Paulson.
Speaker, note the objection of the EFF.
I will. No objections, no further objections. The bill will be sent to the President for what they call assent, to agree with. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill and of Report of Portfolio Committee on Forestry, Fisheries and Environment thereon.
And now recognize the Honorable Gancho again.
Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Xolo, Tata man, kuyabanda. I didn't want to disturb the Speaker. Can they turn down the aircon, please? Banda nyani up.
All the honorable members, yegani lungel from Pegilo Kalagafe. Again,
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
they will attend to your matter. Go ahead, ma'am.
The National Environmental Management Laws Amendment, under consideration by this House, was introduced to Parliament during the 5th Parliament in May 2017, respectively. The bill was initially processed by the former Environmental Affairs Portfolio Committee and finalized during this term. The National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill, B14 of 2017, was tagged as Section 76. The previous Portfolio Committee on Environmental Affairs received submissions, held briefings, and public hearings in 2018, deliberated and adopted introduced amendments in June 2018. The National Assembly considered and returned the bill to the committee in September 2018 for further deliberations. The committee deliberated and adopted the amendments, following which the National Assembly passed the amendment bill in November 2018 and referred it to NCOP for concurrence. The bill lapsed in May 2019 and was revised in October of the same year. Then the NCOP followed the due processes from 2019 and finally debated and passed it in December 2021 and returned it to the National Assembly for concurrence. The committee considered and agreed with version of the NEMLA bill from the NCOP. The amendments were extensive in that they affected 7 associated pieces of legislations, such as Protected Areas Act, Biodiversity Act, Air Quality Act, etc. The ultimate purpose of NEMLA bill was to expand the NEMA principles, advance integrated environmental management, streamline the application process, and advance the one environmental system, provide clarity on compliance and enforcement measures, biodiversity and conservation measures, air quality management, waste management, and integrated coastal management. The critical anomaly that has been addressed is in Section 74, where in the past, one sphere of government could review a decision of another sphere of government on appeal. The committee is satisfied that the bill is positioned to advance critical provisions in the Constitution, particularly Section 24 of the Constitution, that guarantees every person within South Africa environmental rights that the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment has to deliver on the benefit and enjoyment of the current and future generations. The NEMLA bill addresses environmental and biodiversity protection and sustainable use. We then call upon sectors to advance cooperative governance in the decision-making process to eliminate conflicting messages among departments. We are looking forward to the implementation of the legislation, particularly the improvement of cooperative governance and sustainable development of our country that will benefit current and future generations. I hereby recommend that the House adopt the presented National Environmental Management Laws Amendment Bill. Thank you.
I now recognize as there is no list of speakers, I recognize you, Chief Whip, to tell us what you say we must do.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move that the NEMLA bill as amended be passed. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I will now recognize political parties wishing to make declarations. The usual times for declaration of votes will apply. The DA?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As you may have been aware, Deputy Speaker, there was a little bit of a mix-up earlier in terms of our speeches. But what I would like to say is that these amendments were very, very well discussed and argued throughout our committee. And we did come to some very well thought out conclusions. And we do support the objectives that the amendments aim to achieve. And although we did have some concerns, as alluded to by my colleague, Honourable Phillips, and her speech will be submitted to the table, in the whole, we felt that our opinions were taken into consideration, and we support the amendments to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. EFF.